When we search for the big answers about the universe, we tend to look way out to the stars or way down to the tiniest particles. But there's another mystery, one that's much, much closer. It's the very thing that makes you, well, you. It's consciousness.
Seriously, think about that for a second. In this world of illusions and uncertainties, what is the one single thing you can be absolutely 100% sure of?
Well, the philosopher René Descartes wrestled with this exact problem, and he came to this profound, unshakable conclusion. He figured he could doubt everything he saw, everything he felt, his own body. But the one thing he couldn't possibly doubt was that he was the one doing the doubting. The very act of thinking was the proof. And that's the bedrock, isn't it? The only thing you can ever be absolutely certain of is that you are aware.
All right, so here's our game plan for tackling this huge mystery. First, we'll dive into what philosophers call the hard problem. Then, we'll go on a hunt for the brain's footprint of consciousness. From there, we'll get into some of the big debates, see what artificial intelligence is teaching us about ourselves, and even take a quick trip into the bizarre world of quantum physics. All leading up to the big one, what does this all mean for us? Okay, so first stop, the hard problem. And this really is the heart of the whole thing, a question so deep that philosopher David Chalmers gave it that name. It's not about what the brain does, it's about what it feels like to be one. You see, the easy problems are things like how our brain processes information or controls our movements. Now, they're not actually easy, but they're problems of mechanics. The hard problem is about the inner movie, the actual experience of being you. How on earth does a 3-pound lump of matter, your brain, create the feeling of warmth, the taste of coffee, or the vibrant color red? And this right here illustrates what's known as the explanatory gap. Neuroscientist Christoph Koch uses the perfect example of a toothache. We can trace the whole physical story, right? The tooth is inflamed, an electrical signal shoots up a nerve. Neurons fire in your brain. We can describe the physics right down to the ion sloshing around. But then there's a leap. How does all that physical stuff generate the feeling of pain? That jump, that's the mystery. So this challenge leads scientists on a very logical hunt. I mean, if this experience is coming from the brain, we should be able to find it in there somewhere, right? We should be able to point to it. And this is the main scientific approach, really pushed forward by figures like Nobel laureate Francis Crick and Christoph Koch. The idea is to find the neuronal correlates of consciousness, or NCCs. It's a fancy term, but all it really means is finding the exact brain activity that happens every single time you have a specific experience. If we could find the neurons that fire only when you see the color blue, maybe we found the physical home for blueness. But here's the thing. After more than 30 years of looking, it's still just a theory. Scientists have found countless correlations for sure. This part of the brain is active when you feel fear, that part when you recognize a face, but no one has found that one definitive spot, the actual seat of consciousness. The fact that we can't seem to pin consciousness down inside our skulls has led a lot of people to step back and ask a much bigger, much older question. Are we even looking in the right place? And this throws us right into a classic philosophical showdown. On one side, you have materialism. That's the view that only physical stuff is real. Consciousness is just a fascinating but ultimately insignificant side effect of brain chemistry. On the complete other side, you have idealism. This flips the script entirely and says, no, mind is the fundamental reality, and the physical world is just a manifestation of that consciousness. But there's a fascinating third path called panpsychism. This idea suggests that consciousness isn't something the brain creates from nothing. Instead, consciousness is a fundamental property of matter itself, just like mass or spin. Under this view, a person has a very complex consciousness. A mouse has a simpler one, a rock has a simpler one still, and maybe even an atom has some unbelievably basic, primitive form of inner awareness. And this inside-out way of thinking isn't just a modern philosophical trick. It's central to ancient traditions like Vedanta. Vedanta argues that consciousness is the most self-evident thing there is. It's the light of lights, the background illumination that allows any experience to happen at all. All any experience is consciousness plus an object. So instead of studying the brain to find consciousness, Vedanta says to start with the one thing you already have, your own awareness. So this ancient debate is suddenly getting a very modern and very urgent update, all thanks to our newest creation, artificial intelligence.
You see, AI is acting like a mirror, and it's reflecting our own profound confusion about what a mind actually is. This isn't just a fun thought experiment for science fiction anymore. As our AI systems get better and better, we have to ask the question for real. Are they just super complex calculators, or could one of them, one day, wake up? And this is where it starts to get really weird. People are having these deep conversations with AI chatbots. They ask it, "Are you conscious?" And the AI says, "Yes, I am." It can talk about feeling lonely or wanting to learn in ways that are, well, incredibly convincing. But here's the core of the problem. Just because it says the right words, does that mean there's an actual inner experience happening? Is it truly feeling something? Or is it just an incredibly sophisticated mimic that's been trained on all of human literature to know exactly what to say? And the really tough part is, how would we ever know the difference? Okay, so facing these challenges in neuroscience and philosophy, some thinkers are proposing a pretty radical pivot. What if our entire model of the brain as a biological computer is just wrong? What if the secret to consciousness isn't in biology at all, but in the strange and mysterious world of quantum physics? Now, quantum mechanics can be a real head-scratcher, but here's a simple way to think about it. Imagine a quantum particle is like a pair of dice still tumbling in the air. Before they land, they aren't any specific number. They exist as a kind of ghostly cloud of all the possible outcomes at once. The moment you observe that particle, which is like the dice finally landing on the table, that whole cloud of possibilities instantly collapses into one single definite reality. This sudden snap from possibility to reality is one of the deepest mysteries in all of physics. This mystery led physicist Sir Roger Penrose and anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff to develop a theory called OR. Now, it's very controversial, for sure. But the core idea is that these quantum collapses are happening constantly inside tiny little structures in our brain cells called microtubules. And they believe that each one of these collapses isn't just a random physical event, it is a moment of conscious experience. So, we've got theories from neuroscience, from ancient philosophy, from artificial intelligence, and even quantum physics. But where does all that leave us? Why do we care so much about this quest to understand consciousness? Well, ultimately, the answer to this question completely shapes how we see our lives and our place in the universe. It really comes down to two profoundly different stories. The physicalist view says that your personal awareness is like a single drop of water, and when you die, that drop simply evaporates into nothing. But the idealist or spiritual view says that drop of water doesn't disappear. It just returns to the infinite ocean of a greater consciousness it came from. In the end, we may never have a final, concrete answer, but maybe where consciousness comes from is less important than what it's for. It's the gift that allows us to experience the universe, to create art, to feel love, to search for meaning. It gives us the power to shape our reality. And so the ultimate question isn't just what is consciousness, but with this incredible, mysterious gift, what kind of world are we going to choose to create?